Welcome back.
We
It's
are
been,
alive. We
are we?
unfortunately, yeah, I don't know if we're actually alive.
If
The Jags make us want to kill ourselves sometimes, though.
in the
So
sense of football, I would think so. Other sports, it's more tolerable, at least for
yeah,
me, for us.
Heat and Magic are both in the playoffs as of right now. Not even the play in, but just regular play. Just playoffs. So we love to see that. Florida basketball is doing well. Hockey too, because the Panthers are the best team in the NHL. So
I didn't know
that,
that.
that's
That's
how that's how
crazy.
bad the Jags are. I've become a full-time hockey fan.
You've
So
been a full-time Florida Panthers fan?
well, closer to part time, but my heart wants to go full time. I want to go to a game soon, but
Oh,
that's
that'd be
how bad
sick.
the Jags are. Just everything that's transpired the past few months. Yeah, I guess it's been months because I don't. Last time we talked, I think it was just we were saying how
Before
if they lose to the
Tennessee.
Titans, they don't deserve to be in the playoffs. And well,
We did not deserve to be in the playoffs. Oh
so
God, I
we
don't.
can kind of just do a quick kind of recap of just working our way up to now because obviously it's been a couple months. So. Well, yeah, so the Jags played terribly the last game of the season, and Mike Caldwell is fired, which obviously we've already talked, a lot of people talk about the new Ryan Nielsen hire as DC, but I guess to me, just trying to talk more about Caldwell and what happened, because obviously, w was he the best defensive coordinator in the world? No. Did he deserve to get fired? I mean, kinda, but I think it's still hilarious that he was objectively the better coordinator than the one they kept. So
Yeah,
just
but yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't know. I hate talking about the past since it's the past. Probably because we didn't make the playoffs. Even if we did get a winning season, we still didn't make the playoffs.
I'm
So
not
it's
even
just
upset they fired Caldwell because I do think that Nielsen is a good hire. And for what it's worth, we can kind of see things get better, but just very funny.
yeah. I mean, we'll see if we can allude to the change in play calling that they're probably going to do. Probably. I don't know. There's a lot of word back there that they want Doug, at least ownership wants Doug to take back the play calling. Which you know what, after last season, understandable.
I don't think, yeah. I mean, if you're Doug, if you say this season goes poorly, there's a realistic chance that I get fired. So if you're Doug, even if you think Press can be a good play caller, I think just for personal job security, you kind of have to at least look in the mirror and say, maybe I should call plays this year again because if I don't call plays, I might get fired and this might be my last chance in the NFL. So, especially because if you want Press to kind of be your guy, if you get fired, I don't see a team who's I mean, he might get a role as an offensive assistant, maybe a passing game coordinator, but he's not gonna get any higher anyways. So just for not only your job but for presses, you kind of have to call plays because if not, then what if you get fired this year? I mean, if a team's going to say, "Hi, yeah, we want you to be a head coach, but just don't let press call plays," I think he's gonna feel some type of way. But at the same time, would you blame the team for saying we don't want press to call plays when they just saw what happened this year? So
But other than coaching staff, recently there's just been a lot of personnel change in general. Yeah, like basically the entire defensive side's gone. Player wise, we're gonna have a lot of new starters going into 2024. Just over the
with
last few days, a lot of
yeah,
cuts.
yeah, I mean, there's definitely some of them which are pretty expected. I don't think it was anything unexpected. I mean, they released Foley, which I don't think anyone was surprised. Probably
My
the worst
question,
signing.
so that's the thing though. The most boneheaded thing I feel about the cutting Foley, I think it was expected, but the fact that you restructured last year, where you could have added another pass rusher or, yeah, any other help when the defense, and he didn't do jack shit with that restructure. So now they have to eat more money this
Yeah,
offseason because they didn't want to
bad
do anything
process
last offseason.
altogether. They restructured Rayshawn and Foley, and now Foley's dead cap hit is close to 10 million. So they didn't even save that much money. They just cut him because he wasn't that good. So it just begs the question, why restructure him in the first place? So then A, not do anything, but for a player who's not even that good. we're not even 5 minutes in, and I feel my blood pressure rising. My blood is starting to boil.
Okay, we'll go to the second name that they cut. They cut Darius Williams, local kid, which you kind of hate to see, but with the change
Yeah,
of
poor
personnel on
Darius.
defense, coaching, the coaching change on defense, that demands a lot of man coverage. Darius is like what, 5'9", 180. Like,
Yeah, I mean it is kind of tough to see, especially because he was their best cornerback last year, so definitely hurts. And always also local kid, so cornerback was already in need before they released Darius, and now it's mega high in need. There's been a lot of rumbling saying they're going to sign Okuda because he was in Atlanta last year with Nielsen. So even if you sign Okuda though, I mean, I think he's a at best fine cornerback too. He also hasn't been the most durable. And, I would say he's a guy you sign him and bank on. All right, secondary set. So corner's still in need. And then they cut Rayshawn, which kind of hurt, but at least they actually made a good pick on day 3. And the first time I think this franchise, I don't remember the last good day 3 picks they've had besides what Luke Farrell this past the bulky regime.
I'll
But
say, I don't want to talk about too much. But I guess Telvin Smith was kind of the last good day 3 pick, but kind of pops out to me. But that was the last regime too, so you don't want to give anybody credit in this
yeah,
current
I'm not
organization.
giving Bulky credit for that. But I mean, at least with cutting Rayshawn, they have Antonio Johnson, birthday twin, by the way. So at least at least they have a plan set up where okay, it was very expected for them to cut Rayshawn because they have a guy in place who they think can be the starter. And in terms of what Antonio does best, I think he can do pretty much what Rayshawn did. I mean, better near the line of scrimmage, blitzer in the box. Just kind of funny how he was basically their running nickel in a sense, which is just a very funny term. But at least he kind of already got a head start to being a strong safety player. Even though Rayshawn played a lot of games, what he kind of did from that running nickel is a lot of what safeties, he'll do is in safety, play in the box more, kind of blitz. So at least with Rayshawn, it's not as bad. But I think the biggest hole is definitely Darius. I mean, now they don't have a legit starting outside corner who you can feel great about. So
I wonder if he's gonna join in now. But we do have a special guest today, which we definitely didn't gloss over. If he wants to show up.
he might be starting at cornerback too.
Oh
What's
God.
up,
All
y'all?
right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can
We
hear
can't
you.
see you, but we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the video part to work. Hold on.
The important thing is we can hear your wonderful insight.
Uh-oh.
But yeah, he just did for a little bit. But
Uh-oh.
yeah, just going back to corner. I mean, definitely with Darius gone, now it's a massive hole. And luckily it's good cornerback class, so it's a good class to need a cornerbacks in the draft, but it's just with Darius, it's definitely did sting. I think to me the biggest question mark is there's even more cuts they could do. Two of them on the offensive line, which I really think they should cut at least one of these players. But for just quick heads up, so we can see your beautiful face now. Hi Gus, good to have you on the show as always.
What's up, y'all? How you doing?
Good, good. We were just talking about the recent cuts over the past couple days, the 3 players that we cut to make room for, I guess, negotiating toward the deadline yesterday, even though nothing got done. All you got to do is just stay positive because all of those 3 cuts I feel like were expected. But Foley, Darius, and Ray Sean being all cut yesterday. That's what kind of we're in the middle of right now.
Right.
Darius is probably the only one where I could have seen them going into them with Darius, but also due to the scheme, I can understand why and the contract. So I can live with it, but now it's cornerback at 17 is a glaring need. So Gus, can you press man and backpedal? We might need you at corner.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do. I don't know if I've got the length to meet Balky's requirements or not,
Oh,
but
He
damn.
he he's a big wingspan guy, so
I know I don't have that Giannis type thing, but I was a little maybe not surprised by Darius, but I thought he was like a little bit more 50-50 of whether he would get cut because even though, like you said, he may not be a perfect fit for Nielsen's scheme. Like he's definitely best. He can play man coverage, but he's best at playing like off man, whether it is man or zone, and kind of like keeping his eyes on the quarterback, letting things develop, and using his football IQ as opposed to like pressing every single play and going from there. And so I kind of understand it from a scheme fit, and also he's 31 years old, and usually like cornerback is one of the positions that like there's a steep fall off or a steep cliff when guys get to a certain age. But he was so good last year. He was like a top 5 Jaguar in terms of just 2023 production that I thought maybe for 11 or 12 million dollars, whatever he was originally supposed to be on the book for, like I think that's worth paying for a good cornerback too. But not surprised given the scheme fit and the age.
Now, to me, the biggest question is I really just wonder, are they going to keep both Cam and Scherf on the O line? Because I could see a world where they cut both of them, if not one. It really just depends. I know Bulky is a huge Cam guy, so we really have to see. I mean, Scherf is getting up there, didn't play great. I know you were saying that a lot of fans were hating on Scherf, and you thought he played better than what the fans thought. So I can kind of see worlds where maybe one of the two of them is on the team. I just think in terms of for the money they've been earning and how the O line already isn't playing great. I mean, if it was up to me personally, I would rather cut Cam because you already have a guy in Walker Little who when is Walker's never going to start a full 16 at left tackle, man. I feel so bad for him.
Yeah, same. I don't know. We'll see. I thought that at least one of Cam or Sheriff would be gone. Probably Sheriff, because I mean, like you said, I think he's almost similar to Ridley, where like it's all about the expectations you have for him of like whether or not he's been good. If you expect either of them to be like an All Pro, which they were previously, maybe Sheriff only had Pro Bowls under his belt. Like if you expected that type of like top tier play, then you were going to be disappointed. But they're both definitely like above average starters last year. But he's definitely a guy, another one like Williams, where you kind of worried about the age, and he's been kind of like battling through injuries. I feel like his whole tenure in Jacksonville, and so on one hand, it's like, oh, maybe he would be really good if he had a full healthy season. But at the same time, like I think it's would be a fool's errand to like expect a full healthy season out of Sheriff at any point now.
Even
Uh,
kind of Cam too. I mean, he hasn't been the most durable player. I mean, he had obviously the suspension to start the year, which he was because he was recovering from the injury. He had this is the take the PEDs. So he got suspended, and then he got injured again. So with Cam, you're kind of wondering, even if you really do think he's a good player in the locker room, in the presence, at what point, if the best ability is availability, and he's not that available, at what point does that start to outweigh the pros? So to me, I really think with Cam. I mean, I think his contract expires this year anyway, so whether he's probably going to be gone this year. But then again, considering it's Cam, I wouldn't be surprised if they resign him to a cheap. I don't know. They love the guy, but
yeah,
he hasn't played. He hasn't been that reliable to where you can feel great about this is our left tackle for the next 3-4 years. So
no.
poor Walker though.
I was gonna say I almost feel like if Cam sticks around, it's more of like an indictment on like Little than anything about Cam, or where it's more about like the Jags like don't really quite trust Walker Little to start like full time at left tackle, which like I'm sure the majority of fans would probably disagree with, but that would just be my like main takeaway. If Cam ends up being a Jaguar in 2024, then it's just like I see it more that they don't quite trust Walker Little than they like have all the trust in Cam Robinson. Well,
Um,
I
I,
think
I, no,
I think
just, I
Cam would
just,
be a sneaky trade candidate. I think like I'd be surprised if he was cut, but I think if another team like came to Balky and said, "Hey, we'll give you like a early day 3 pick for this like veteran proven blindside protector," then maybe it would be like, okay, we can if we're getting something back for Cam and we already have Walker Little like in tow or whatever, then maybe you move on from him that way. But at this point, I would be a little bit surprised by a Cam Robinson release. I do think even though like the cap went up, even though Balky said at his combine presser that like the cap going up doesn't really do anything for the Jags because like the cap goes up for every team, like it influences every team. I think that one way that actually does impact the Jaguars is with like these O line decisions because I think before the cap went up more than people expected, like one of Cam or Sheriff was definitely gone, and now because the cap increased more than people thought it would, I think there is a chance that they could keep both. And I definitely wouldn't have said that 3 weeks ago. We'll see.
Which is crazy though, because I feel like, yeah, you're right, because you can kind of justify the money now, even though like Scherf and Cam are gonna make like close to 20 or more than 20 in the case of Scherf. Like I don't know if it's even worth it, especially when you have to go ahead and pay. You need to pay Josh Allen. You need to go ahead and pay Calvin Ridley. You gotta have to pay Trevor Lawrence next off season. It's just,
Right.
just trying to set yourself up, even if you set yourself back at like corner, potentially wide out. Like I would say cutting Zay Jones is more of a viable option than maybe cutting a Cam Robinson, but you know, it's
That
just
just further barons a position that they need to
Right.
upgrade. So it's just funny that even with O line and receiver, they have contracts that they probably can cut, but they also need help at those same positions. So like I mean, at least with O line, if they do cut Cam, you have a guy in Walker who started at left tackle. I mean, they think he's worse than Cam, which I think they're in terms of play relatively close. Maybe a little bit of a drop off, but I don't think it's a huge difference. And then in terms of contract, I mean, Cam's getting 20 million, Walker's on a second round contract. I don't think it really should be a question mark, but I mean, Cam's a locker room leader, so I know they value that. But it really just is crazy that some of the positions they need help at are the ones they have the bad contracts. Just that's so Jaguars. We're gonna say that at least 5 different times in this
Yeah.
podcast.
The good news is that the waiting game won't go on much longer because I think I'd be surprised if the Jags were like completely done with their cuts. I guess there is a chance that they're only going to end up cutting those three players, but I think we could still see like more news kind of trickle in this week before tampering begins on Monday.
Really depends because I know they obviously they tagged Josh Allen, which I don't. Everyone wanted them to tag Ridley so they could just pay Josh, but now Ridley's a free agent. There's still a chance they can re-sign Ridley, even if let's say the initial deal is more than Karen Cassidy's. They can structure the deal where it can be a low cap hit the first year. To me, it's just a question mark of how aggressive are they going to be because even whether they re-sign Ridley or not, they need to make a few couple signs in free agency. They talked about they wanted to get a vet center, so they need to sign literally any center that's better than Fortner, which I mean is not that much. That's not a high bar to clear, but you're gonna need some money to sign a vet center.
Mhm.
A lot of talks about Akuda, so I don't know what his market is gonna be, how expensive he's going to be.
I think
You
it'd
know,
be
I,
very cheap, honestly.
I mean, yeah, I don't think it's gonna be dirt cheap, but even maybe 5, 6 million. I want to say probably top out at 8. So it really just depends. But no matter what, they're going to need to spend in free agency. They can't just sit on their hands how they did last year and the roster didn't improve. So they have to tinker with some things. So we'll see what they do with the cap. I mean, for my money, I we'll see what they do, but it'll be a very interesting few periods. And it's not even mentioning the whole Ridley debate if they're going to bring him back, which obviously I'm Team Ridley, but
Yeah, I'm interested to see how like Ridley impacts the rest of their free agency because like hypothetically, if Ridley got a really big contract from another team, then the Jags would be able to recoup a third round comp pick, similar to Jawan Taylor last year. But the Jags also like didn't do anything in free agency last year, and that's how you were able to get that third round comp, because you have to like not spend nearly as much as you're giving up pretty much. And the Jags gave up Jawan Taylor and didn't really sign anyone, so they got a third. And so this offseason, if Ridley gets a really big contract from another team, like the Jags would basically have to again be non-players in free agency in order to get a meaningful comp pick back. So I think that I would be surprised if like the plans do change. I think that like regardless of where Ridley ends up, then like the Jags are still gonna spend not a lot, but spend some in free agency. But it'll be interesting if Ridley ends up getting a bag and then like the Jags kind of back off and they're like, oh, we're just gonna be super minimal again this offseason and try to get back that another third round comp pick.
That's the thing, though. I think the fact that Balky and Doug are potentially GMing and coaching for their jobs this coming season, I would expect them to do everything in order to improve this roster right now, especially since you already finished second in the AAC South. You guys were, in control of your destiny the entire way of the season, only to falter during the last week of the season, which is peak Jags, as Javal and I talked about before we started the call. But I think more than now than ever, you got to be as aggressive as you can. Trevor wants him back. You're gonna have to pay Trevor next offseason, get him back as number one receiver from last year. If you have to make more sacrifices, like, maybe that is cutting Cam, maybe cutting Zay Jones, who was unreliable last season, only playing half of the games available to him last year, the domestic violence arrest, and then the just not being available for half of the season as well. I think that does have to factor into your decision making as well. Do you go out and trade for someone that might be tagged and doesn't want to stay? Do you want to do something outlandish and, pay another offensive lineman, even if none of these offensive linemen that we ever pay in free agency ever worked out? I don't know, but you got to keep trying because, I feel like you're coaching and GMing for your job.
No, that's definitely a fair point. They're not going to like just sit around their hands. That's definitely fair.
Is it in terms of free agents they could go after? I mean, I know obviously there's a lot of talk about the guard class, how they're going to get paid this offseason. So I don't want them to go after a high. I feel every time they go after a high priced guard, it never works out.
Right.
I mean, I don't think Zane Beadles was super high priced, but Andrew Norwell did not work out. Brandon Sheriff obviously now. So in theory, if they let Ridley walk to sign Michael Onwenu, I'd be okay, good player. But then because of Jags' history, I would say he's gonna turn into a pumpkin by the third game. So I just if they can even just get a couple mid-tier free agents, not super high expectations as you're referring to earlier, they can just get a solid center where they can have a vet to compete with Fortner and maybe one or two more guys. But it really just depends on how much will they spend on Ridley if they bring him back, and then if they don't bring back Ridley, I mean they have to pay a receiver eventually. You know, I mean you can go in with Kirk and Zay and think that's okay, but at the same time, even if those guys don't miss games, I don't think you can sit there because it's just they have so many holes to fill and they don't have that much to play with. It really just they've backed themselves into a corner, and I'm curious to see how they attack it because especially if they let Ridley walk, then it really just opens up so many a giant can of worms.
I
I
don't want to think about wide receiver class in the draft too because we have a general manager whose best wide receiver was he drafted last year in the sixth round. And
Are you
I
disrespecting AJ Jenkins? First round receiver?
Peterson doesn't have a really good track record either because
Yeah,
Rager was the pick with Peterson, right?
it was
Oh my
Rager.
God, they took
I
Rager over Justin
JJ
Jefferson
Arcega-Whiteside
Oh
was they
yeah,
took
that
him
was
over
over
DK
DK
Metcalf.
Metcalf.
that guy. Oof, that was
So I don't have a very that's why I just want them to resign Ridley because just being honest, I don't trust the staff to get the best out of a wide receiver.
They're gonna
Even
take
if
that Texas wide receiver who ran was it that guy who
Xavier
ran a four.
Worthy,
Yeah, no, yeah, the guy who ran a 4.21, and then he's gonna turn into John Ross 2.0 basically.
probably.
probably.
God's
I'm
sake.
interested. I'm interested to see what they do on the offensive line because I think it's kind of like defense as a whole, where it's more about like not having a weak link than it is having like a superstar at one specific position. So I feel like, as you were saying, Javal, like the Jags in the past have been like trying to somewhat fix their entire offensive line just by signing like a really good top of the market guard. So this year, I think I would, even though there are a lot of really good guards on the market, like Robert Hunt, Jonah Jackson. There's a lot of them. I would rather them get like a John Runyon from the Packers or John Simpson from the Ravens, or even just like re-upping Ezra Cleveland. I think like trying to find a gem in the rough in one of those mid-tier guys is definitely the way to go.
I was gonna say it's probably screaming Ezra Cleveland on like a 2-year deal, and then mashallah draft another late round guy to compete with Luke Fortner, who's probably gonna lose, and we're stuck with Fortner for another year. As much as I don't want to
Yeah.
say it.
It'll be interesting because I think, like Javal said too, like they're definitely going to bring in competition for center. Like that's probably been my biggest takeaway from Balky's just media availability since the season ended. I know obviously there's a lot of focus on quarterback and rightfully so, but I think he also hasn't necessarily been shied away from the fact that they want to bring in competition on the offensive line and specifically at center and specifically in free agency. And so I'm interested in like whether they bring in someone like Lloyd Cushenberry. Cushenberry, is that his name?
Oh, that
Christian.
was your boy, Well, that was
I,
your
I
boy a
I
few years
was I
ago.
was very high on him pre-draft. I think he's just
Oh
been
yeah,
okay, but at the same time, I think just okay would be an upgrade. So
yeah. But at the same time, like he's like the best center available. So I'm interested in if they go for like the best center available, or if they go for like the seventh best center available, and it's like a true competition in training camp between whoever that is in Foreigner. But can Cushenberry play guard at all, from what you remember?
I mean, I think
I
he
don't
was a
know.
bit of a stronger prospect. He's not Fortner strength, so I think could he play guard? Potentially. It really just depends. I'm looking on Spot Track right now. His market value is pretty low in comparison. He's one of the younger guys, so I mean, we'll see the bag he gets. I remember I was literally watching an NFL video today, and they had the top free agents. I saw Cushenberry kind of high up on the list, so we'll see what his market looks, how it looks. I mean, I know there's also a couple guys. Even now, I'm looking. I know Vegas, Andre James. He's a center. He's pretty young. I have a Raiders fan. He says he's just okay, but I'm saying okay is better than Fortner. So
Yeah.
he's saying y'all should take him kind of as a joke, and I'm saying I would legitimately sign him. Graham Glasgow's more of a guard. I mean, there's a few guys who Connor McGovern from the Jets. There's a few guys who are just okay. Will Clapp, I would take him just for the meme, just for the name. But
If I read you his NFL draft bio, I don't know if you're gonna like this, Javal. It's pretty funny.
the comparative, it's gonna be Fortner 2.0, isn't it?
All right. For the past 15 years, LSU has given the number 18 jersey to players that have displayed a selfless attitude and played like a tiger. That number was worn by quarterback Matt Mock, who led the 2003 LSU squad to his first national title in 45 years. Cushenberry was the first offensive lineman to earn the coveted number in 2019, sharing the honor with defender Caleb Chason through
Oh no, I
NCAA
don't know. I
rules.
don't know.
Required Cushenberry to stick to his 79 jersey, where he displayed an 18 patch on his jersey instead. So
Just for
he
that alone, I'm a little bit off.
I read it, I was like, oh, the Jamal's gonna get a good kick out of this one.
Hey, you got to
Because
bring it all together. That's so Jags, right?
we are the ultimate if anybody that doesn't know, we are the ultimate anti Caleb Chase on podcast that
Anti-sat guru.
yeah, we are the most vocal against the sad guru himself. So the fact that I read that, looking at his draft profile, that y'all mentioned it, I was like, ah, shit. It always goes back to Caleb Chason, doesn't it?
It always does. Actually, I feel like that's the first time it's ever come back to him. But yeah.
Oh
Are we gonna re-sign Chase? I'm still
no,
scared they're gonna
no,
re-sign Chase. I hope he
no.
doesn't fit the scheme, but he's going to be so dirt cheap because nobody's actually going to give him a contract worth anything. That I can see Bulky signing him for just a 1 year, 2 million, and say this is a
Javal, it's
special.
okay. No, we're not that desperate for
I
that
Yeah.
mean,
picture.
if he's a special teamer, I could live with that. If he's our edge three, then I'm going to shoot
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah,
I think
that's the
like
thing though.
maybe there would have been like a path to him coming back on like a crazy, like a 1 year, $2 million deal if he was a good scheme fit. But like he's too small, his arms are too short. I don't think Nielsen's the kind of like I don't think looks at him and is like, oh yeah, I'm excited to coach him next year.
Well,
So
you see, Ryan, with Chase on here, he's a great special teamer. We love his heart and competitive. The arm length isn't great, but he's a real work. I'm a little bit scared, just a little bit, but hopefully this doesn't happen.
Who are the
Before we go,
potential? Yeah, who are the potential edge guys that they could sign though? I feel like that could be like a sneaky
Danielle
position. We could.
Hunter, the rumors will never die for some reason. Danielle
That's
Hunter,
yeah,
true.
I don't
I
get
don't,
that.
I don't think it's gonna happen, but
Not as
If
long
that
as
was their most prominent free agent signing, I would take it. Even if we have like, I mean, I hope we don't like Calvin Rock, but if we go like Calvin Ridley and like a prominent the third edge on the for free agency, I'd take that honestly any day.
there's still a lot of the edge they could have signed last year on cheap deals. Leonard
yeah,
Floyd's going to be available. Zadarius Smith might be available. I mean, I don't know. I don't think
young Clowney.
Ngakwe's arms are going to be great. Clowney's going to be available. So all the guys they should have signed last year, but
Yeah,
they didn't because they were sticking with Sat Guru. They're going to be available. So even if they just get a legitimate third edge, is Smoot going to be a free agent? I see him on Spot Track. So I
who
guess
is going to be a free agent? I would
No,
expect
well,
him to
oh
re-sign.
my goodness. I literally just see on Spot Track 3 Stewan Smoot, Chason, and Fowler back to back to back. And
uh,
somehow Fowler has a lower market value than Chason, and I would legit rather sign Fowler than Chason.
I
I
would honestly
Unironically.
love Fowler back
He
if
would unironically be a better third edge because he's at least actually produced it outside of other
right.
teams, even just in a
I bet he goes
rotation.
to Washington. He seems like a big Dan Quinn guy. I think
that's
he
true.
followed him from Atlanta to Dallas.
That's fair.
But Fowler, yeah, Fowler would be better than Chase on that's for sure.
Cleveland Farrell. There's gonna be guys. I mean, it really depends on do they want to go for more of the bigger edges? You know, obviously with Trevon, they gotta have one strong guy. Do they want to back up to him? Or do they want more of a backup to Josh, kind of more of that fastball? I know Bryce Huff is probably going to be one of the more underrated guys. A lot of people are saying that Bryce Huff has been a really good rotational player for a long time with the Jets. So if they were somehow able to get him for even 7, 8 million, that'd be great. I think he's a very
Yeah.
underrated player, but
I think he's going to end up getting like just paid $1 billion by some team to be like their number one edge rusher.
probably Washington. They're very desperate for edges as well. Now that you said
Yeah.
Washington, they need a lot of help. I mean, heck, Chase Young's a free agent. The Jags are rumored trading for him. Could they sign Chase Young after the season he had? I don't think he's going to be super expensive. So, and he's
Fair,
got
yeah.
the credentials. I could see Chase Young.
I was kind of out on him just because he's been like so inconsistent, like really in his career, but especially this year. And like
Oh
that
my
seems
God! But him as
motivation
like a
really
third
there for him.
edge, yeah.
But like if he's like, yeah, if doesn't have any interest and you can get him to be like paid as a third edge rusher rather than paid as a number one or number two guy, then I'd be interested in it. But Josh Uche is definitely the name that has my
Yeah.
attention for edge rusher free agents because I think Mia O'Brien said last trade deadline that the Jags sent the Patriots a fifth rounder as like a trade offer for Uche. And they were like splitting hairs between a fourth and a fifth rounder. So take that what you will. There's definitely interest from Jacksonville about Josh Uche. And I think he'd be a really good fit because last offseason, like they were talking to Clowney and Calais Campbell and a couple of edge guys. And it seemed like the disconnect there was that Balky wanted to pay them as a backup edge rusher and they wanted starter money. But I think Uche is someone that like probably isn't going to get starter money from the league, even though he is a very good pass rusher. He's like kind of
He's a
more like
third down guy.
specialist. Yeah, just like a third down guy. You don't really want him. He's too undersized, really, or just has too light of a frame to keep out there on early downs against the run. And so he's a guy that I think would make a lot of sense to just like be a part of late down packages for Nielsen behind like the starters, Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker.
You think there's a chance they bring Calais back since they have the? I mean, they were interested in him last year,
Yeah,
and
he
they have the
visited.
coordinator. So
I think the Jags were definitely like one of his top three options. It seemed like he ended up getting like kind of convinced by Arthur Blank to go to Atlanta, but then it was like them and the Jags. I don't even know like who else really might have shown interest. And so I think both he and Bud Dupree, who's another like big
was
physical
from Atlanta.
setter who can like really play well on the edge on rundowns, especially. I think both Calais and Bud are like guys to look out for.
I mean, everybody would
Maybe
love
calling
Calais.
Nielsen over
Yeah.
too, which is a big connection.
Shout out Pint of Jack, who is the funniest Calais Campbell slanderer in the universe too. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it just sucks because of the amount of investment that we've had in interior and edge rushing. Seems like a lot of it's gone for naught. And then the one person that's been really super consistently productive for the Jaguars is the guy we don't want to pay. And it just kind of handcuffs us a little bit from, having a bit more flexibility going into free agency. Was it next week or 2 weeks from now? Is it next
Next
Alright.
week
week, yeah.
already?
I've got to take. I've got to take. You know how
Uh-oh.
like, he has this thing where he like doesn't do any deals during the season, and he always waits until after the season to like do contract extensions. Like that was a big thing with this Josh Allen saga. Is that like it's seemed like the smoke from this week was that like they were actually getting kind of close to an extension, but they just kind of ran out of time. So that's why everyone is fairly pointing out like, oh, you should have just started contract negotiations sooner. Maybe it would have worked out. So I think that the first player that Balky signs to an extension in season is going to be Trayvon Walker because that's just like so clearly like his guy. And like as if Balky is still here, like when Trayvon is going to be capable or eligible for an extension, I think he's going to like might break his own rule and extend Trayvon early because he just loves him so much.
I think the second that he's eligible to sign him, he just go, well, my number one overall pick, that arm length. Have you seen his wingspan?
Yeah,
You know,
everyone's gonna be like, "What? What? You've never done this before? This is crazy." It'll be funny. It'll be a good day on the Bird app.
Why are y'all talking about that when Balky isn't going to be our GM next season?
time it is the Jags. So
At this point, I feel like Balky's gonna be around forever because like even if the Jags are next year, like you can just see like the path to them having Peterson be the scapegoat, and then Nielsen's the interim head coach, and then Nielsen ends up getting hired full time in 2025. Like the path is kind of there.
Guys, I have a confession to make. I already talked to Javal about it a couple of weeks ago, but I bought a second season ticket this season, so
He
No,
gave them more money.
I gave them I'm giving
no.
them double the money
Boo
as last
this
season,
man.
and now the fact
Boo.
that you have that scenario in my head, it makes me want to jump into the St. John's
I don't think
River
it's too
even
late.
more.
I don't think
Speaking of jumping into the St. John's River, did y'all see Balky's like jump off or hanging from a bridge comment at his press conference?
I didn't. What did he hang
What
off
did
a
he
bridge?
say?
I thought
He
I
was
saw
like,
the whole
he
press.
was like, yeah, I don't really read that much online. If I did, I'd be hanging from a bridge somewhere.
Oh, I think I
Like,
remember that.
first of all, that is a crazy thing to say at a press conference.
I mean, it's the truth.
Second of all, like he clearly does like read everything online.
Yeah, if he's saying that, he
The
knows what
person who
everybody says.
are you
It's
saying
so
that
obvious.
Broad Dog doesn't read online?
Yeah.
Oh.
That
The
was just a
person
wild
We
comment.
never touch upon that. Like, is that
partner
legit?
allegations.
The allegations that potentially Trent Baalke has a burner account and
I don't think it's
potentially he replies to other Jaguar fans on this burn app. We are living in hell, guys.
Yeah.
We are in hell.
It's only gonna get hotter. Summer's
uh,
around the corner.
it literally is starting to get harder. Really quick, I was just looking at some of the defensive tackle free agents, trying to see if there's anybody cheap they could get because with
Yeah.
the Foley cut, I mean, they still have Roy, obviously. We'll see what happens with Ham, how he comes back, because the injury definitely did set him back a lot. So if Ham can even be 85% of what he was 2 years ago, I think you can feel good about that. They have I almost said Eddie Lacy, but I mean Eddie Lacy's big enough to probably play D tackle. So but they have Tyler Lacy who was kind of just okay. I mean we'll see what else. I think they might bring back Ledbetter just because he's probably gonna be super expensive. Is just kind of a depth guy, but just kind of looking at some guys on the list.
Yeah, just
I
to
mean
fill out the roster.
Derek Notty's the good big run stuffer.
Is
Lucky
that the Chiefs guy?
yeah, I mean it
Yeah.
really just depends on do they want more of a interior gap penetrator guy to actually play three tech because I mean they don't have really anybody on the inside, or are they just gonna go for more of a guy to replace Foley to just plug up the run? That's to be determined. A lot of it is the draft because with the draft, there's a lot of the D tackles are more of the smaller gap penetrator types. So
Mhm.
I mean, then there's Devondre Sweat, who was literally 360 something. So I mean, it's just I'm very curious because obviously they need interior defensive line help and they need a run stopper, but they also could use a guy who could play on the inside of three tech, which
Right.
people are saying they want Trevon to do that, but it'd be nice to have a guy who could do that on first, second down as well. So I'm
Yeah,
really
just like you said,
curious.
like Trayvon would only be doing that like on like third downs, like maybe once or twice a game, really. And so like anyone expect like Trayvon will play more snaps inside next year, I bet, but it's going to be like a marginal increase.
NASCAR package and not a full time three tech role. So
Yeah. I do think the Jags are going to be looking for more of like a three tech, like you were saying, more of like a pass rusher than a true like just space eating run defender because like they kind of already have that in Devon Hamilton, and hopefully he'll be a little bit better this season. So maybe they'll bring in somewhat like a backup to either compete or straight up backup Ham at like a nose tackle. But I think they honestly thought Foley was going to be like their pass rushing guy, and same with Roy Robertson Harris. And Roy has some flashes every once in a while, but like Fatu was always just like a two down guy, and so I think they're going to be. I mean, obviously, like when you're playing interior defensive line, you got to be a good run defender, but they definitely would like some pass rush juice out of that group. The two names that I've been thinking about for just like defensive tackle free agents are Sheldon Rankins from Houston and Contavious Street from Atlanta.
and yeah, I was gonna say. I know people talked about Rankins a lot. I think even on Spot Track, his AAV projected to be around 10 million a year, which
Sign
is
it
it's
up.
it's not bad. I mean, I think Rankins definitely would fit. Hopefully Houston doesn't resign him, and then
Yeah,
just I think it'd be a good fit. Just able to get a few different guys in there. I mean, we'll see. I don't even really know what they use Tyler Lacy for. He barely played enough, so I can't even say, is he going to be more of a run stuff for a three technique? I really have no idea. So it really just depends on the guys available. But if they can even leave free agency with ideally they re-sign Ridley and they get a cheap center and a Kuda.
Mhm.
And let's say maybe one depth D line, I think you can live with that. But they just have to add players to those positions. So not in the draft saying, okay, well, we need a corner, but we need a receiver, but we need O line, but we need D line, and we
Yep.
don't have that many picks. So
No, exactly. I definitely want them to like you just said, mostly fill out their interior linemen in free agency, so defensive tackles and like an offensive guard and a center, so that like when they do get to the draft, they're not just like sitting around in the first and second day and be like, oh well, we haven't addressed these needs yet, so we're gonna have to reach on someone.
I guess now we can be a little more draft centric because it's also going to dictate a lot of things. And obviously, I think the most biggest need, or most big, probably the most glaring need is cornerback. And it's a great draft to need a cornerback. A lot of good guys. I mean, between Terrion and Quinion at 17, I think that makes a lot of sense. Even if they trade down, I don't think Rakestraw is going to be a first rounder. If you get him in the second round, that'd be great. TJ Tampa. I really think they could probably double dip at corner though. I did a mock draft just kind of for fun where I got Rakestraw in the second round and then got Kyrie Jackson, the Oregon corner, who's also he's got the bulky measurables to play corner, really long guy. So
Yeah, he's a good day two target.
also is it Cam Hart from Notre Dame? He's also
Yeah,
a bigger corner. So it really just depends because they literally need a nickel and an outside corner. So they probably should double dip at corner. That's kind of my draft take.
yeah. I
Or
don't disagree.
is there any free agent that kind of goes up there that can fill up one of those positions? I mean, I feel like you can draft an outside corner if you really want to. Is there any slot corners that are out there that would be interesting to see that just like a kind of a short stopgap
I
kind of
The only one I can
thing?
think of off the top of my head is Kenny Moore, but I would assume he's going to re-sign Indianapolis.
There's a free agent cornerback available. His name is CJ Henderson. I don't know that much about this guy.
No,
Maybe they could give him a foot.
Steven Nelson is out there too, actually, from the Texans. I think he kind of like bounces out from
Back and
like inside
forth.
versus outside. Yeah, so it's not like he's like a Chris Harris slot only guy, but he's pretty sticky in man coverage. So I think that could be another good signing from Houston.
Except when Calvin Ridley was against him in that last game we played against them.
Oh, really? Did he torch him?
I think like the double move, the touchdown and the octopus that he had. I thought he beat Steven
Oh
Nelson
yeah, he
twice.
did beat Nelson pretty bad. I'm
There-
just looking again on Spot Track. I mean, there's a few names at corner. I don't know why JC Jackson's top of this list. He's going to get pennies after his terrible stint in LA. Adoree Jackson can kind of play both, but he'd probably be a little expensive because he's a legit corner. Very funny. Darius Williams is the third guy on here. Wonder where he came from. I mean, Kendall Fuller.
So
There,
there's not a
Good,
lot.
but he's also old, and I feel like he's going to have a decent market. So, like, I would rather the Jags not like outbid teams for a 30-year-old corner. I
Food
like
is right around 8 million. So
I like Rock Ya-Sin from the Ravens. I wanted the
Oh,
Jags to sign him last offseason, and then he was like just a free agent for months after March, and eventually got picked up by the Ravens. I think he had a decent season there after he was originally drafted by the Raiders.
he was
Uh,
drafted by the Colts, and then I just looked him up just
oh,
to see.
really?
His full
Oh,
name is Abduram Ibn Ramadan
you're right. You're
Yassin.
right.
So I see
He
why he
went
goes
he
by
went to the
Rock.
Raiders in between those two. I forgot about the Colts. And then Ronald Darby was also like a veteran because Rock
Dog
Ya-Sin,
experience.
yeah,
He
but
was on a
Ronald
Super
Darby,
Bowl team.
an older guy. He had some really fared really well in like man coverage metrics last year, and so again, he's an older guy, and you don't really trust that at the position. But if you are going to take a look at an older guy like Ronald Darby,
John Murphy Bunting bad. I know the Tennessee was kind of disappointing, but I
right?
remember even last offseason people were saying we should sign him as a nickel, and he signed for pretty cheap. It was 1 year,
Yeah,
$5 million.
no,
So
I definitely wanted him because he was pretty good coming out of Tampa, and then obviously there was like the Mike Caldwell connection. I almost feel like he's like in a similar spot to Adoree Jackson, where like I think technically they didn't do it very well, like production wise or efficiency wise last year. But I think there's also like a lot of that that has to do with like scheme and kind of like the players that helped around them and stuff like that. So that's kind of an interesting case. I'm not sure.
even Christian Fulton, I remember I was really high on him pre-draft, and he kind of went out of Tennessee. He's going to be free agent. I mean, he's pretty cheap, so
Yeah, he could be a buy low.
yeah. I mean,
Bob
there's
injury discounts.
There's definitely a few guys who are available I could see. Are we sure they're not going to just re-sign Trey Herndon again? I know that he doesn't fit the scheme at all, but it is also cheap. So
Yeah, I don't know. He's a
Meek,
I like Herndon, but I would be a little surprised if he was on the team again.
he's
Tony
more of a
Khan will
zone
demand that they
corner.
bring back Trey Herndon.
That's my
If
guy. I found
his
him
Yeah,
undrafted. That is
that's
my
Shipley's guy.
UDFA.
Shipley likes a good Trey Herndon.
Well, Meek Robertson on the Raiders is a free agent. He played a lot of slot too, as well, but a shorter guy, but he played pretty good as far as the Raiders. So if they don't resign him, I'd be interested. So, I mean, in terms of court, I just saw that Gregory Jr. is what is it? ERFA exclusive rights free agent? I just saw his
Yeah,
name on this list and I was just so surprised. I don't even
Greg
know what that
Jr.
stands
Is that
for.
who you're talking about?
Greg Jr. I guess he's on this list. I mean, I don't even.
Yeah, it's more of like a procedural thing where like he would have to be like the Jags would have to have zero interest in him if he didn't come back. But like different coaches have kind of talked him up over the past year, and even though he's definitely like closer to a bottom of the roster type guy, I think the team likes him enough that like it's a no brainer. He's going to be brought back and on the team next year.
Would you be surprised if they go in free agency and get any of those positions outside of O line, D line, receiver, and corner? I mean, maybe running back to get a depth guy, but it's also bulky, so we know he's going to draft running back on day two
Yeah.
because that's his thing.
I think it's either going to be running back, like they definitely have to do something at RB3 because Dearness Johnson is a pending free agent. So like whether it's him or like someone like Antonio Gibson or Zach Moss or just like some mid-level guy who can play on third downs and on special teams. I think it makes sense to like go the veteran route, whether it's
Boston
Dearness.
Scott, you are Jacksonville Jaguars.
They're
That would
paying
be
Saquon Barkley. Fuck it, just all the running backs. So
uh,
Barkley doesn't have to sign.
another another like super athletic freak at running back with no vision. That would be interesting.
Hey, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't oppose to Saquon.
I won't oppose either. That would be fun.
It
He
would
could
be funny, but it'd
pretty
also be like, why? Why are we doing? But
Even
also,
even if they got just any between, I think they just want
be
tank
interesting.
insurance more than anything. Where if Tank is bad, which granted he didn't look great, but also the O line wasn't great, so I'm not super out on Tank. It just I think they probably need to
I
get a
have hope on
bruiser.
Tank, man. That preseason, they had me having a lot of hope, and
Yeah,
then yeah,
he looks
the
legit
Rick.
good at training camp. I don't know what happened.
The offensive line looked good in training camp and preseason, and then the offensive line played one regular season game, and then we just decided we can't block anybody.
Pretty much.
So I guess it really depends, but I mean, I don't think they'll be super active in free agency, but really just depends. They probably will try to upgrade running back a little bit. I mean, I'd be fine if they re-signed Dearness. I think he played good for his role. So if they re-signed him, I'd be okay. I think there'd be familiarity, obviously. O
Yeah.
line, they won't go tackle, but if they can just get an interior guy for cheap, that'd be great. D line, are they going to go for a third edge or try to get another three technique in there? We'll see. And then cornerback, obviously, they could use an outside and a slot. So it's a lot of things up in the air and not a lot of money to fill it out with. So they're gonna actually have to draft positions of need early on, which Balky never does. So just wait, I can't take my linebacker, my running back on day two. What? I
Well,
can't take my fourth string tight end in the third round. It's going to
second.
be interesting offseason.
Oh
Like I
man.
said, I just. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gus. Didn't
I
mean
was
to
just
cut
gonna
you off.
say, yeah, it is gonna be a long offseason. I'm looking forward to next week, but after like the first wave of free agency, I mean,
Yeah,
it'll be a
because
It
long
is
time.
so tampering is legit. Is it Tuesday or Wednesday when tampering
I think
starts?
tampering starts
Monday.
Monday, and
Yeah.
then
Oh boy.
Yeah,
Okay.
get ready, John.
outside of Ridley, I don't see them making a big free agent splash early on. So it's really just it'll
It's
be
really
Ridley
Ridley or
watch.
nothing, isn't it? That's interesting how we're stuck here. But I feel like the fact that they gave up 2 draft picks for Calvin Ridley, I think he's gonna stay a Jaguar, especially Trevor's pushing for it. You kind of don't want to piss off your franchise even more, and I feel like you have to bring back Ridley, even if you have to cut Cam or Zay to do it. I would 100% do it, or Scherf to do it. I'd 100% do it for keeping Calvin Ridley around.
I'm just
A
looking
thousand yard
at
receiver 2 years off the football. If anybody wants to make fun of him not remembering his routes or whatever, this dude was 2 years of pro football. He has been our best wide receiver since Jimmy Smith's been here. So that I don't know.
I would have said even A-Rob, but even
Yeah,
then they let
A-Rob.
A-Rob
Yeah.
walk, and I don't think they still really recovered from it. So I'm just even looking at the receivers in free agency. I mean, it's really not that great. I mean, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Boyd, MVS, which
It's rough out there for free agent wide receivers. That's
Yeah,
like
so we're gonna have to
former
pay.
Jags,
Yeah.
DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault.
Oh boy. I mean, bring back DJ Chark if you're gonna cut Zay. I'd take that, honestly.
I don't think they're cutting there.
Just, I
And
mean, in his
Uh,
role, I think Zay's fine, but just after I mean, I get obviously in 2022 why you want to keep Zay based off that film, but at the same time, after 2023, you see him, he wasn't available, and when he was available, he didn't make that much of an impact. To just, I mean, granted, injuries are annoying, so I get it. I can't hate too much, but it's just.
hey, man, this is a podcast. You can hate all you want.
I try to be positive when as much as I can, but then the Jags just draw this negativity out of me. So, where they're gonna I mean, even if Josh Reynolds, I think he'd be good.
Oh
Low
yeah,
key,
I
dude.
think that'd be good.
He's the one player who, if they don't re-sign Ridley, if they can get Josh Reynolds and a big body receiver on day 2, then I'd be kind of okay with that. I mean, I think Hollywood's a fine player, but he's probably gonna be too expensive. I know we talked about earlier. I'm just trying to think of a legitimate player that makes sense. And
his
I think
name is Calvin Ridley.
Mike
I
Williams.
do not overthink this. Who else? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I said Mike Williams because I think the Chargers are going
Oh.
to cut him pretty soon.
Yeah, but he also
yeah,
can't stay healthy too, so it's kind of the
that
Zay
that
Jones
that'd be the
conundrum too.
bulky that'd be a bulky dream. Torn ACL. And
Right.
then Mike Holmes would be great for the 3 games that he plays in Jacksonville. He'd be amazing for Trevor, and then he probably gets hurt, and then we're going back to Zay Jones fades all the time.
Hmm.
So, oh man, what is this team going to do?
Well, are there any I don't know, any names that you guys like for 17th overall?
I mean,
It would be like what's your best case scenario and what your worst case scenario?
I mean, if you want to go worst case scenario, since I'm Mr. Negativity all of a sudden, we draft a kicker, pick 617.
Okay.
First round kicker since Sebastian Janikowski. But no. Um, what would be? I guess Brock Bowers, maybe. I mean, I would justify
I
it,
wouldn't hate
but
it. I would
I,
not hate it.
I
I'll be
mean,
here for it. He's good.
that's fair, but like, I
With
don't
the
know.
dunk, but he's a good player.
But
I
it's
would put him at
just,
X receiver. I don't care.
oh well, you know what? That's fair, but
Worse.
I don't know. It's not really
I
the
Cooks
worst
out
one.
there.
Yeah. Who let this man cook? But I don't know. What's your
Terron
other
Arnold
worst? Terrion Arnold, Kool-Aid
would be a best
McKinstry. Oh,
pick.
best. Oh yeah, Terrion Arnold would be really good. I'd take that any day of the week.
Yeah.
Or I
Yeah.
mean, I
I feel
like.
like corners could have like a sneaky fall in the draft just because everyone's going to be chasing offensive linemen and just offensive players in general.
Isn't it like the first 5 corners are like really good, and then it just falls off like a very,
Not,
very dangerous cliff?
I wouldn't say dangerous. There's definitely a bit of a drop off, but it's a very good cornerback class, both in terms of some outside guys and nickels. So even if they were to kind of go cornerback round 2 and round 3 or 4 and double dip that way, I think it would also make sense. I mean, it really just depends on, because if Tyson returns back to his level of play, then obviously he can handle guys. But with corner, it is also composition where with the secondary, it's another weakest link thing where you can have a really good couple cornerbacks. And if there's one guy who's not that great, then he's gonna get picked on. So it really just depends. I mean, even 2017, they had really great players. They had Barry Church, and teams would just try to pick on Barry Church when they can. So, not to pick on poor Church, but just in terms of corners in this class specifically, I think it's very good in terms of depth. It just depends on how well can they develop these guys because they could walk out of this draft with probably an outside corner and a slot and feel pretty solid about it. So
I
But
agree.
will they actually make the right decision in free agency in the draft? That is much to be determined. We can only talk about it and hope that the Jaguars do something well, which hasn't been a good start at the end of the day.
Not take another linebacker.
I think there's
And
definitely a realistic shot that they take just like best player available on the offensive line in the first round. Because I think like the offensive line class is really deep, but it's like just so talented at the top two that I can see it like offensive linemen kind of flying off the board. So I
so what
wonder,
did Bro Dog said? Tyler got in. They really like him, so expect him at 17.
yeah, there you go.
They
And
did
then,
scout Oklahoma last year, so
They didn't
right,
like Oklahoma a lot. So hey, they took a good one last year. If they double dip round two or round, if they do round one and they trade back and take guy and like they did with Anton, I wouldn't be too mad because in that scenario, hopefully you paid Calvin Ridley and lost a third round pick, so you'd have to try to recoup maybe a 3 or 4. And if you trade back and then you get that offensive lineman you really, really like still, I wouldn't be mad at that. Or a corner that you like that what's that Michigan corner's name again? Rackeshaw? Yeah, if you take that
yeah,
end of round one, yeah, I'll be okay with that too, personally. But it's you don't want to kind of play with your food when it comes to, just choosing guys that would help out the team like day one once they step into the building.
no, that's fair. I do agree with Javal though. I think like the corner class is like pretty deep. So I just wouldn't be surprised if like even if their biggest need entering April is objectively corner, like I think they could still walk away from the draft with like a day two guy instead of a day one guy.
I
I
guess in,
wouldn't.
in terms of how I would rank their needs given to this draft, I mean, I think the biggest need as a whole is probably just objectively, their biggest needs are probably O line, then corner, and then D line, then receiver. But in terms of this draft class, I think D line would probably be my first, which I'm not saying they have to go D line or D tackle at 17, but it's definitely the weakest out of those guys because it's a very good receiver class, a very good O line class, and corner and D tackle. It's okay. It's not abysmal, but it's not so much where if you don't get a D tackle early on, you can't get a good guy, but it's at the same time, it's definitely a bit more of a drop off. So it really just depends on how they view the strengths of this class relative to their board because, I think they could definitely go a cornerback at 17, Quinyon, carry on and make a lot of sense. They could probably go for O line. I mean, there's so many guys. It just depends on who you think could play guard and tackle. I was listening to a draft where it was Trevor Sikkema and Connor. They're on the 3 round mock draft and they had Olu Fashanu at the first round, who I don't know if he can play guard, but he probably could play tackle next year if you cut Cam. Not gonna happen, but And they had Lad McConkey at the second round, who I think can play outside, but because he's white, people are gonna think he can only play slot. So he wouldn't be my really replacement, but I think he's also a good player. And
Yeah,
then
that'd be interesting because I agree. Like he's a good player, and like I'll try not to get too upset about like them drafting a good player, but it just seems kind of like redundant to get like a like good route runner.
oh the Bills released Mitch Morse, another center. That is a vet center better than Fortner.
That one could be interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, to get back to that draft, and they had them taking a corner, Chris Abrams, drained from Missouri, who played opposite of Ray Straw. But they said he was more of a nickel player. So, I mean, I'd be fine with taking a nickel in the third round if he's a good nickel, but they also need to get a corner for outside as well. So it really just depends on how do they value the strengths of this class to their board because for the most part, it matches perfectly. They need receivers, they need corners, and they need offensive line. So this is a good draft for their needs. Defensive line is kind of the iffy part, so where I don't know how early they'll take defensive tackle.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think Murphy, the guy from Texas, is like Byron Murphy. I doubt he makes it to 17th overall, and so like, and it seems like it would be kind of foolish to trade up in the first round for a defensive tackle. But and then like Johnny Newton, I know has a lot of like film fans, but I think he's more of a like late first round projection than a mid first round projection. Plus, he's like kind of small for a defensive tackle, so I know if Balku would love that. So, like, I don't disagree with anything you said, but I would be a little surprised if they did go defensive tackle round one. I think it's definitely more of like a round three, round four type of position for them.
It really just depends on how aggressive they want to get and which need because if Nilsson's saying, okay, just give me a couple street free agents and a late round guy, and we can work on the defensive line depth, then I'll feel fine. If they want to try to go defensive tackle early, then I wouldn't hate it. So, I mean, obviously, I know Ship is very anti JPJ at 17. So, it really just depends. I do think if they do draft an offensive lineman first round, the best option is probably to draft a tackle who can play guard. And then that way you can have a guy who can play guard this year. And then if they move on from Cam and Walker, they have a tackle for next year also.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
think I know you talked about Troy Fontenot, who makes a lot of sense. People talked about him
Yeah.
playing guard. Fulaga also from Oregon State. Can he play guard as well? So it's a very deep O-line class. I know people are saying Latham is also kind of split if he can play guard or tackle. So
Hmm.
really, there's just so many different options at O-line. It depends on who do they think can play inside and outside and versatility. But there's going to be a good player at 17 on the
Right.
O-line.
I think everything you just said also applies to the cornerback position because I think like they're gonna get like a Jeff Okuda or like some type of like mid-tier starting caliber corner outside cornerback in free agency. And then I think like what I would almost like expect at this point is that they're gonna draft cornerback like top 50 or whatever and have him start on in the nickel like as a rookie before eventually bouncing outside because that's what they try to do with Tyson when they drafted Tyson 33rd overall. He was in the nickel, like or playing out of the nickel for the first half of the season, and then they like pretty much changed from a zone or from a man heavy to a zone heavy defense in the middle of the season and put Tyson out wide because he just wasn't doing all that great inside. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out with their
Me
20.
with To me with corner, the only thing is I just kind of have some concern because nickel is so much of a different position than outside cornerback. Then I
Yeah,
feel there's some players who can do both, but I feel it's rare and you can't just take an outside corner and put him at nickel. So if you do that, you have to have a guy with true versatility who has experience because with the NFL, you already have to prepare for the difference in skill level. So then to try to learn a new position to then play inside after playing outside in college. I mean, some guys are better transition to play nickel, but it's not Madden. You can't just put a guy on the inside corner and think he'll translate everything well. It's a different position playing from boundary corner to slot corner. So that's really my only thing where I think they could try to do that role. I don't know if it'll work out well unless the player they get can actually do both and
yeah.
not it's a good class, so they could find some players who can do both, but it's not a
Mhm,
universal thing where it translates.
for sure. All right, boys, I gotta run real quick. Any last second questions before I go?
What do you think about Cyprian getting his jersey retired? I'm sorry, it's the funniest thing ever.
Yeah, how like he's publicizing it and no one else is.
I'm sorry, but he's not even the best 37 in this last Jags decade,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I almost like feel bad because it's seeming like getting sad at this point. I don't know. It's cool though. Like he was on the Titans for a little bit, so I guess it's nice that he's retiring a Jag. I don't know. I know he has like some real estate company, but I don't know even know if he's like still based in Jacksonville or if he's like just visiting to get his jersey retired or retire as a Jag. He's not getting his jersey retired. I don't know. The whole thing is funny.
Uh, Like nothing is normal with the. I'm taking Javal's line, but nothing is normal with this region. It never is, and it never will be.
Yeah. I'm excited to see like fan posts from people who are out there because like I don't even know if there's gonna be like a network or like a website that's like truly covering the event since it's such like a thrown together thing. So I feel like most of like the covers that we get are just gonna be like fan pictures and videos, and so that'll be funny to go through.
Oh boy. Well, Gus, thank you for joining us middle of the pod. Not really middle. You really just popped in at a good perfect time, honestly, where you didn't go too in depth. We'll try to catch you again, maybe after the free agency, or maybe we'll get someone else on, but we'll definitely talk to you in between now up until before the season or even training camp starts. We'll try to keep in touch before this hopefully after all this free agency and draft stuff's over with.
Yeah, once we got some, I don't know, something to really talk about, some players who are on or off the team rather than although the hypotheticals are always fun. But appreciate you guys. Fun as always.
All right, see you when they break our hopes and dreams.
Yeah, till then.
Very soon.
Javal, we're back. I don't know how I survived this. Like even like then, the first pod back is very tough because you don't know what's going on when your optimism is like diminished from,
The optimism,
August.
the
Uh,
optimism from October is
uh,
just
it's at an all-time low, man.
crashed.
But if we bring in someone good or if we pay Calvin Ridley, it's like, all right, boys,
No,
we're
I
back.
still don't have optimism even if they re-sign Ridley.
I think I'll feel a little bit better if they do. Well,
I'll feel better that I get to say Broward excellence, but I just at the same time, I can't be convinced this team is going to be good on the football field until I see it happen. Especially with the O line. It was just so bad last year.
but I think the true Jaguar offseason experience is that we're gonna complain about what we're doing in free agency in the draft, but if they give us like a throwback alternative or just throwbacks as uniforms again, we're all gonna be bought in again. It's just a Jaguar fan way.
They don't I think yeah, the worst case scenario is everything bad happens and
And
then
they
for the
don't do
30th
a
they just
throwback.
then everyone is just going to just sell it. Everyone's gonna say we're not pitching in for anything.
We're
But
not a
I
real
don't know.
NFL franchise. I don't even know what to call this, honestly.
We're a glorified UFL team.
Yeah, we're just a very fortunate fan base to have an owner that cares, but also is super incompetent in his job. So,
He's
like,
not good, but he cares and
that's the
he
thing.
has
He
money.
cares. It's just that he just trusts. My big thing about Khan with a lot of people is that he just puts his trust too much into people that don't know what they're doing.
I
So,
think part of it is just the delegator effect, where obviously he's got Fulham and AEW also, so he's not 100% Jags all the time. So I don't know, man.
I mean, AEW is all Tony. Yeah, Shad is more AEW, well, not AEW, like Jags and Fulham for sure. But AEW is mostly Tony and just Shad, I think, funds the whole thing. But even though I don't know how those two people just juggle those three things all at the same time. It takes so much time and effort to run any of those businesses, let alone all three at the same
if I
time.
was that rich, I would just be on yacht every single day. I would not give a hoot about anything else. I would just be on the beach every single day. What? Jacksonville who? I don't care.
I don't
Shot
know,
is
but you're one of 32 that could potentially bring the most coveted prize in American sports. And
I mean, they're not. Let's be real, John. Let's be real. We know the Chiefs are gonna three-peat. There's nothing that stopped them this year. The Chiefs looked incredibly average for all of the reg. Not only did they look average in the regular season, but they should have lost to Buffalo, should have lost to Baltimore, and then they had the Voodoo Magic versus the Niners. They're gonna three-peat. There's no point in watching the NFL. I'm just here to see if Trevor Lawrence looks good and the jerseys are cool. That's all I care about at this point. We're not winning anything. The Chiefs are going to be a dynasty. We can't stop them. And even if they're not great, somehow the Texans will take over because that's our luck. And Trent Baalke is our general manager. So until until the day he stops drafting players that won't end up contributing right away, I won't have faith.
Well, we'll talk to you next week. I don't want to think about it anymore. But
Yeah, we'll
Javal,
hopefully a post free agency splashes we'll do. We can talk more. We'll see what happens with Ridley. That'll be the player we care the most about. So we'll
well,
definitely see.
all right, Javal. I hope you have a good rest of your week. We'll talk to you probably around this time next week when all the early free agents have been paid. Hopefully, Calvin Ridley stays a Jaguar, but every time I hope for something, everything just goes to crap. Yeah, exactly. Love you, Javal. Thank you again to Gus. Like, follow, subscribe, whatever you want to do with
Thank
this.
you for enjoying our foolishness this long, as well as the Jags foolishness.
All right. Have a good rest of your day, guys. Appreciate y'all.